I bumped into a friend of mine in Soho who had recently had a heart attack. And I actually really liked the guy, and I asked him how he was feeling and doing. And he was so joyful that I actually cared. And he asked me what I was doing, and I showed him some of my art. And he immediately said, "I love this. Follow me." And he walked me around to a gallery in Soho on West Broadway, showed my stuff to the owner. The guy said, "I love it. Can you put a piece of art in here?" Came by Friday, brought it to him, and he sold it Saturday. And he says, "What else do you have?" And then it was 2 galleries, 4 galleries, 10 galleries. And each thing is a little thing to the next stepping stone.
You're listening to Lights, Camera, Crypto, the podcast exploring all things entertainment and Web3. I'm your host, Stephen Ladden, and this week our guest is acclaimed artist Paul Gerben. Paul has worked across paint, sculpture, photography, and digital art for over 30 years, and has worked with some of the biggest names in politics, entertainment, and sports, including Bono, Robert De Niro, and David Bowie. In our conversation, he details how he got his start in the art world, his upcoming projects with hockey legend Bobby Orr and Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak, and how ultimately being a genuinely giving person has helped fuel his success. Let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much.
Really excited to dive in and learn more about Paul Gerben origins and leading up today and your current career and how you've currently merged art and Web3 and all of that stuff. But maybe before we even get there, starting at the beginning, I know you grew up in an artistic household in New York. Did you always know that art was going to be the path for you?
I don't know that I could say that, but I did. I think I did it. My mother really pushed art on me as a young kid.
In what ways?
Instead of me eating crayons, she got me to draw with them. Although I did eat a few.
So it was more of to help keep the stock of art supplies. She nurtured the creation of art rather than the consumption of it.
Yeah, she was very creative, and I think she had kids early. She was going to be a teacher, and she just very encouraged art into me. She was pretty artistic herself, but I think her just constant encouragement and support of being artistic and creative is what got me to where I am.
And was there a moment along the way where, if her constant encouragement and call it chirping in your ear that, hey, like pushing art on you, was there a moment where you realized, wait a minute, this is something that I want to dedicate myself toward, and it's not just me not eating the crayons. This is a serious thing for me.
Yeah, I wasn't eating crayons right before college, luckily. But yeah, she pushed me to go to art school for college. So I think, and also academically, I wasn't smart enough to go to medical or law school. So I think it all went hand in hand.
Gotcha. And was there something about just art itself, as you mentioned, went hand in hand with not pursuing those other avenues? Was there something about art that sort of captivated you, or you must have an inclination that, hey, you're pretty good at it? What kind of reinforced you to, aside from your mom, to go on that path?
I think just growing up, I grew up around, I luckily had a couple of pretty artistic friends as a child, like pretty talented illustrator, painter kids, comic books, and science fiction stuff. I think it all encompassed together. I was really into collecting comics and comic book art and science fiction art and cartoons and doodling. And I don't know, a combination of that and taking fine art classes at a younger age.
Sure.
Doing still lifes and figure drawing and all that kind of stuff.
And so in some ways you kind of had a little bit of an artistic community, would you say?
Yeah, I don't know if I would call it a community. I think when you're younger and you're growing up, you have certain social groups of kids. Some kids are really into sports, some are into science and math, some are into music, and some are into art. And I think I just fell into the little art group.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
you go to college, graduate college. In
No,
between,
I only went for 1 year and then I dropped
oh wow,
out.
I didn't realize.
Yeah.
And what sort of motivated the departure?
I think a culmination of multiple things. I think in high school, I'd taken college courses, like foundation courses that teach you drawing and anatomy and perspective and certain things like that. And I think I really didn't have the finances for college. My mother couldn't afford it. My parents are divorced. And I also was working full-time job because even though I was in college, I didn't have really any spending money. So I think just being in school and working that much, I think it was a little overwhelming at 18 years old to do both.
Sure.
And I don't know, I never felt like I needed college that much. I always felt like college was more of a business, and you're paying 15, 20 grand a semester, or taking college loans, and they're giving you books, signing you books to read and memorize. I always felt like school in general was more memorization than comprehension. And I like to comprehend when I learn stuff. So I'd rather even though I dropped out freshman year, sophomore, junior, senior year, I still would pay for my own classes at a different school. I would take a photo class at one school or a silk screening class at another school. And I just picked and learned different things. And I used to bus tables in college, and a friend of mine who was also a busboy, he had gone to vocational school for art and design. He gave me the same kind of hands-on real world education. And I like learning real world stuff more than school stuff. I always think that most of the kids that came out of my college, all their work looked the same, and they didn't really develop or create their own style or taste. I think that's because they were all doing the same assignments, and they weren't really finding their own voice. I think the same applies to musicians as well.
So in many ways, leaving college, going out, having that real world experience helped you to create your own style and your own taste and not complete the same assignments as everybody else.
Yeah, there was no assignments. It was just I immediately started doing graphic design, photography, and I stopped doing art. By the time I was like 18, 19, I started to learn more professional art skills to make a living at. I didn't go back into art into my into my like 40s.
Was there a moment then before you went back into art as you're learning the professional skills where you realized, wait a minute, this is actually something that can sustain me?
No, it actually just completely happened by accident. I think I always, because I didn't go to school and I always had to fight to get my own opportunities or work at a company or intern for companies just to get experience. When I had a branding business, I was doing graphic design and branding for 25 years, all pretty much self taught. And when I had my studio in Manhattan, I would let other art students intern for me. And one specific student was doing this very interesting graphic design, digital mixed media art. And I'd never seen anyone do that with computer. And he showed me how he did it. And I started doing it for fun just because I enjoyed it. And I also never felt like the art I saw at art fairs or galleries was really very unique or different or impressed me. So I was just doing it for fun for about 8 years and didn't sell more than one piece in 8 years, but I wasn't doing it for a living. I just did it for fun because I enjoyed doing it. So it's almost a testament to do what you love and it could turn into a career.
Sure. And that actually seems to be a very clear through line through a lot of these interviews with artists, whether regardless of the medium, comedian, musician, actor, filmmaker, artist, a lot have stories much like yours where pursuing the vocation was just an expression, or it was something that they enjoyed after work, or it was something that they enjoyed full time, whatever the case may be. It was that creating for the joy of it. And then it just so happened that through that joy, through that repetition, a career was
Yeah, the
born.
joy of the repetition, and you wind up putting in your 10, 20, 30,000 hours just because you enjoy it. And then all of a sudden it's a career. And having the graphic design background for 25 years in photography, it added to the success of it. I've always told a lot of artists that you could be a great artist, but if you don't have a great website and great business card, all those elements add value to your work and create a perception of success quicker. And that also helps evolve your career.
And just to understand or just to clarify, so you're saying after 25 years in with your graphic design business, that's when, as an artist, things started to take off in that direction.
Yeah, no, about after 8 years of doing art and printing and framing large pieces and putting them in galleries here and there for fun, and about the eighth year, it started to really happen. Like sales started happening. And I realized this is a better business than actually graphic design and photography combined. So I stopped doing both and put all my time into art. And now I'm full time art for about 12, 15 years now.
Amazing. And Was there a moment then as you were making that transition that you could point to, or maybe it was a set of smaller experiences where that shift 8 years in started to happen?
I always say that one story was I bumped into a friend of mine in Soho who had recently had a heart attack, and he was in the nightlife world, the club world. And I actually really liked the guy, and I asked him how he was feeling and doing. And he was so joyful that I actually cared, because most people in nightlife don't really care about people that much. They're more into nightlife. And he asked me what I was doing, and I showed him some of my art, and he immediately said, "I love this, follow me." And he walked me around to a gallery in Soho on West Broadway, showed my stuff to the owner. The guy said, "I love it. Can you put a piece of art in here?" It was like a Wednesday. He says, "Come by Friday and bring me this piece." So I came by Friday, brought it to him, and he sold it Saturday. And he says, "What else do you have?" And that just started
Wow.
to evolve more and more. And then it was 2 galleries, 4 galleries, 10 galleries. And you just build relationships. And then some celebrities started to order commission pieces from me. And each thing is a little thing to the next stepping stone.
Sure. It sounds like there was serendipity, but also that the cliche of preparation meets opportunity. If he,
Yeah,
you
exactly. And also being kind and being genuine and just being a real person and not being fake, I guess is a word, but just being kind to everyone that you meet that you like, and showing real genuine interest in people. And I don't know, I think it all evolves in itself.
totally, and it feels more organic and authentic, that path, than if you were being fake or called slimy or opportunistic. I think people can sense that out, and it seems from the way you're describing things, at least that interaction on the street.
Yeah, I like slimy that you threw the word. I've never heard slime. I played with slime as a kid, but I've never heard slimy in a conversation. But yeah, I just think it's like everything I've done is organic. There's no plan. There's no sort of, like you said, there's no opportunistic thing. It's just everything for my life is organic, and I just go that way, and it just seems to work really well for me.
For sure. And do you think the build kind of happened? You mentioned some notable celebrities have commissioned your work. Is that sort of once one does and others are exposed to it, then all of a sudden you're getting orders from a different clientele? Is that sort of how that all?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to, I don't know how it just organically keeps happening to me, but it's just happened a lot. And or a celebrity comes in a gallery, buys a piece, then they contact you and they want something custom, and often it's a gift from an agent, a manager, a wife, a husband, to that person, something special. Because I think it's one of those things that, like, what do you get the person that has everything? A custom piece of art seems to be a really nice, special thing.
And in terms of special thing, just to circle back to it, you mentioned having the real life experience and parting ways with the traditional college path for a minute to cultivate and create your own style and taste. How did that influence 8 years after the graphic design business? How did that all come back into play to what you began to call it the relaunch or the official launch? Or I don't want to disparage any previous works, but you're saying 8 years after the graphic design business, doing
25 years after graphic design business,
right.
doing the art for 8 years for fun. I
Yeah,
think,
exactly.
yeah, I guess the word is that all the three careers meshed together. Shooting photography 25 years, doing graphic design 25 years, and the art. And a lot of the art I was doing was digital, like in the beginning. It was a mix. I'd take a photograph, then I'd bring it into a program and add layers into it. Then I would print it out, paint on it, rephotograph it again, pop it back on the computer, and just go back and forth and use the modern tools, like what Warhol used in his era, whether it was silk screening. At some point, someone said that's not real art, or everyone has their opinion. But I was doing digital art for probably 25, 30 years. And now you've seen the surgence of NFT art and digital art really becoming solidified in the art community, all the way up to Christie's and Sotheby's auctions, which is fantastic. Like when the whole NFT market thing started to boom, I was getting calls from every person on earth going, "Are you going to do this? What are you doing? You're like, you've been in digital art forever. How can we get involved with you?" And it just everything snowballed in an interesting way.
Sure. And maybe that's a good segue. You're getting all these calls. What eventually, or what was the one that you felt was aligned with, as you were talking about before, the authenticity, genuine nature? What path of all of these incoming calls was the one that felt right for you?
You mean for digital NFT art?
Yeah.
I got a lot of calls. People wanted to invest a ton of money into me to do a platform. And I really didn't want the fiduciary financial responsibility of an investor and hiring people again. And even though it smelled and seemed like a great opportunity, I was in such a happy place just being by myself, working for myself. I didn't want to go in that direction. I just wanted to make digital NFT art, but I spent a year learning everything I could about it. And I spent a year and probably made 2 to 8,000 pieces of art, digital art, no joke. And I
Wow.
only released 24 NFTs. I wanted the work to be really special, and I wanted to put a lot of time into it. That way it stood the test of time. And I sold my first NFT I sold with a physical painting, a very large piece for about $250,000, 65 Ethereum at the time when the ETH was up very high. And I wanted to just sell less pieces for more money and create scarcity and add value to the collectors. Like I didn't want to do a money grab. Like every single artist I know did these money grabs where they put out editions of 500 or 1,000, very large editions. And these people put money into it, and then there really isn't any value in it now. Not to say there won't be in the future, but the one thing I learned about the physical art world is the same thing. As I started to do on the art world, I was starting to do editions of 300, 150, and a couple of older artists that were very successful said to me, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't be greedy. You should do editions of 40 or less. And I said, why? And they said, because you're doing justice to your collector. By putting so many out, years from now, if that collector wants to sell it, they're not going to get that much money because there's a lot of that same piece available. And I'm happy I made those choices. I'm happy I only put out 2 editions of 10 and 4 one-of-ones. And I have a couple of big drops that I've been working on preparing with a couple of celebrities in tech and sports. And we're just waiting to see when the market comes back a little bit stronger to release those.
Gotcha. So those are they're already done. They're just
They're already done. Yeah, I'm doing one with Bobby Orr, which will be, I did a whole multi-level thing of pieces that come with sculpture or digital frames with physical prints and memorabilia and even experiences with Bobby.
That's awesome. You're using the art then to build in sort of other experiences with the celebrity that you're working with.
Yeah, and physical collectible stuff too. Like the famous diving photo of Bobby Orr, like when he's flying and he got tripped in midair, and he was probably the most famous hockey shot. They have the rights to the image, so I turned it into a beautiful piece of art. So maybe we'll do a small edition of that and then give the collector an opportunity to trade it in for the physical if they want, like what Damien Hirst did. Those type of things. If you buy a one of one, you might get 8 box seats to a game with Bobby and a sculpture I made of him as well.
Got it. So there's clear blending of
experiential stuff and print, sculpture, and digital framing, a whole bunch of stuff.
which probably feels better as an artist, I'd imagine, to
Yeah,
have,
it does.
right?
And yeah, to feel like that person has an option, or they're going to get other elements that come with the NFT. Yeah, exactly.
With that said, do you have a preference or any thought you solidified in the NFT space, having been already in the digital art space for many years? Is this sort of the next evolution of the space you're already in, or is it something parallel or tangent, or I guess, what are we experiencing right now with NFT art?
I think the whole NFT market came in like the internet originally, like when all the websites started coming out and it was this big bubble and everyone put money into it. And then it seemed to collapse and all these companies went out of business. And then the tech just kept advancing and eventually the tech catches up. I think the tech in the NFT space is not where the NFT space is yet. I think that's been the biggest issue. And also the fact that crypto went down so much that the NFT market went down 98% in sales. I think the only stuff that seemed to do was the community things where people joining together, but a lot of rug pulls, a lot of people lost a lot of money on that stuff. I just didn't want to be involved in anything that was going to lose people any kind of big money or anything like that. I wanted to make sure that as I put NFTs out there, someone's either buying it because they love the art and what I did, the animation, and it's something I like to look at, just like a physical piece of art, or that they're doing as a long-term investment into me and my career, and that I love digital art. I'm so passionate about it. But I just want to build a slow audience in that space. I didn't want to put out too much stuff yet. I still have a ton of really beautiful pieces, and I'm working on physical pieces that'll attribute and come with them before I release them.
Got it. So it sounds like then you're really being mindful of, as you mentioned, the community advancing the community that already exists and then incorporate the NFT community as well.
Yeah, but I haven't really done a community project yet. I've been in talks now of doing a big community project with a bunch of big players in the space. But when I do it, I want to do it with the right people. And in the meantime, like I said, I just put out 2 editions of 10 and 4 one-of-ones just for some of my collectors that collect a lot of my physical art and started collecting stuff in the NFT space.
Right.
So I wanted to,
And go ahead.
yeah, I wanted to do more high end, like I said, a scarcity model was what I felt was the most valuable to collectors.
Totally. And when I was saying community, I meant more the community around your art specifically, not necessarily Web3 community or anything like that.
Yeah, but I do love the space and I've built some great relationships and friendships. And I'm definitely going to dive deeper into it as it starts to bounce back and the tech catches up a little bit. And I might even do a platform myself as well. Again, the tech wasn't there. I feel like it was so complex to onboard and purchase something and send something. And unless you're very tech savvy, even everything I would do, I always had to call someone to guide me through every step because it was like I had to be on like 8 websites just to start, from
Right.
a Gemini account to basically to all the different accounts you need.
The MetaMask wallet to the
The MetaMask wallet to your OpenSea, your super rare accounts, your just again, there's just a lot of different moving parts. I think once it becomes one click purchasing, I know Amazon's about to launch a platform. I think some of these bigger sites, and like I said, the tech gets better and you could buy Ethereum in cash and you don't have to set up all this complex stuff with passwords. I think it will become humongous. I still think it's going to be a very big thing in the future.
You're saying the tech needs to catch up a little bit.
The tech needs to catch up. The crypto market has to bounce back. There's multiple things that affect things. Which is a shame. I didn't really understand that the crypto market could affect the NFT market so much, but obviously it did.
Sure. And it sounds like then once that's smoothed out and the process for people to be onboarded is a little easier,
I think the marketplace will go 20x.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. In terms of your own personal Paul Gerben community, have you received inquiries from collectors or from fans? Like, what's the engagement been like since you've embarked onto the NFT path with your work?
I think the engagement, like I said, I still go on Twitter spaces sometimes and I go into clubhouse rooms and I engage with people in the space. But I think again, I think there's just a big pause in the space. Everyone got nervous. People lost a lot of money in crypto. And then obviously in their NFTs, even me putting out those NFTs and seeing the sales come in and then seeing your value of your work go down 2/3 because the crypto is so low. I think people just are hesitant. And I think it makes sense. It's if your cash went down 75%, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
People don't see it as that, but that's really what it is in the end. I think as soon as crypto has another bull run and ETH and Bitcoin go back up and the tech is already advancing very nicely, I think it'll all merge. Like I said, like when websites started to develop credit card payments and easy ways of payments and ordering stuff, some of the people who stuck in and did the right thing excelled and other people fell to the wayside. I think it's the same thing with the space.
So it's those who see the forest from the trees here and can understand that.
I think people, like I said, that do money grabs that were just trying to make money because it was a hot market versus thinking about the long-term value of it. I glad just being a little experienced in the physical art world that I was able to understand that and make moves ahead of time to not oversaturate the market and not do a money grab. And everyone who bought my NFTs is still super happy that they bought them and believe that in the long term they'll benefit from them in some manner.
And it sounds like too, part of that feeling may have been crafted by you intentionally by being authentic and not going for a money grab or a rug pull or anything like that, and really being conscious about and making a conscious decision to protect the art in many ways.
I also didn't know if the NFT market would crash or not crash. A bunch of the buyers, the collectors that bought pieces from me, I wound up some of them surprise gifting them physical art of the same value of the pieces they bought. That if the NFT market, if they ever were anything worth anything, at least they got gifted pieces of art of the same value. And they were all pretty surprised that I did it, but I just wanted to make sure that their investment in me, at least in something that was so new and we don't know the future of it, that they felt like they got their money's worth. And I think they seem to all really appreciate it.
Yeah. And again, I think just by virtue of how you're thinking about your brand, your business, it's very client focused.
Yeah, I think you want to give a lot of value to people. It's always, even I just bought my first house and redid the whole house, and I was ordering flooring from a really beautiful floor company, and the guy asked if I would barter and trade him. I said sure, and so he gave me like 50, 60 grand worth of flooring, and he picked like 50, 60 grand worth of art, but I want to give him like 100 grand worth of art because I don't know, I just appreciated him doing that, and it saved me that money, and I wanted to give him that extra value.
Yeah. Yeah. And is that something you think you've strived to do over the course of your career?
Yeah, 100%.
And it seems like that same ethos is exactly, to boomerang it back to that conversation on the street prior to the gallery showing when your buddy walked you around the corner. Like it just feels
Yeah, I wound
very,
up gifting him a beautiful, like $30,000 piece of mandala. He's from South Africa. I wound up gifting him a piece for getting me in that gallery, not because he expected it, but it was so nice of him. And then he wound up gifting another mandala to Larry Mullen Jr. I didn't know he was great friends with the drummer from U2. So it's just nice to give, and when then you receive something back unexpectedly, it's also such a beautiful thing. I
sure.
think that's just a nice way to live your life.
Which again, not to harp on it, but that's the ethos of, to tie in what you were already doing in call it the real world. That's what a lot of folks in the Web3 space, or what decentralization is predicated on, is that idea of giving back and helping each other. And really, it feels very on brand for what you are already doing naturally.
Yeah, I do love. That's what I loved about Clubhouse during COVID. You had these communities of people that just really encouraged and supported people during, I think, a very emotionally tough time, and people are having a lot of mental health issues, including myself. It was a very depressing, scary period, and it was just nice to see all these people came together during that and created that community and created that ethos, like you're talking about.
Yeah. In terms of ethos and choosing either a client or a collaborator, what goes into it for you for when you make a selection to collaborate with somebody? Like, how do you make those decisions?
I don't know what you mean by collaborate. Maybe
Bobby Orr example. What goes into that?
I just really liked his son. His son wanted to do something special, and I just love their energy and vibe. And just I'm a big Up Your fan, and just wanted to do something special with him.
So for those examples, it's more what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, and finding the
I like to work with people I just like to be around. If his son wasn't a nice guy, I wouldn't have done it, even though
sure.
there'd be opportunity. So I think it's about working with people like these really positive, great, encouraging people, and also he's pretty much of a legend in the sports world. And the sports market was also probably the biggest thing that took off with the NBA Top Shot. And like I said, collectibles, sports, and art mixing together.
In terms of collectibles, sports, art, what can we expect to see that you can talk about? I know you mentioned you have several pieces in the can already. Next 6 months to a year, what are you working on? What can we expect to see from you?
I developed an NFT drop that we're still talking to Steve Wozniak about, that I did most of the artwork already. And hopefully we'll wind up putting that out eventually. And a big portion of that will go towards his charity, but it's a whole bigger project that they're working on that I'm going to be involved with his charity in. But that's not being released anytime yet. It's still in the works.
And you said that's Steve Wozniak?
Yeah, the founder of Apple, and we're waiting to get approval from his team and his charity before it's released. So that might be further down the line.
Cool. And I'm curious in terms of just career trajectory and confidence in yourself, and how you were able to cultivate that to help you. Again, I know you said being a good person and doing what you loved and having the successful graphic design business, and again, pursuing the things that interested you. But what gave you the confidence to just do it? Mom's pushing you to do art, you like it, but there must have been, right, some factor or some underlying motivating force that was assisting you on that path.
I got lucky because grew up with a lot of people with all different tastes, but all very good tastes, but also eclectically different. I have an aunt who's a sculptor and painter and interior designer. My father was an interior designer and antique collector, and my mother was pretty artistic, and she was an interior designer. And I think growing up, instead of going to sports games and baseball games, I was going to carpet tile stores and being asked at a young age, does this carpet match with this tile and this rug? And you start to adapt a sensibility of taste, of how things work together, how things go together. Self confidence is, I don't know if it's self confidence, it's just self belief, I think is a better word, more than self confidence on an ego kind of level. I think it's just self belief and doing the work, putting in the hours. I think most people don't put in the 10,000 or 20 or 30,000 hours into any of their careers. Really talented people all the time. I have a friend who's an incredible impersonator and he wants to be a comedian, but he doesn't do anything to further the career. He doesn't put in the time. He doesn't do improv groups. He doesn't write. I think if you don't put in the time and you don't really look at other people's work and be self-critical of the work and what do you like about the work, what do you not like about their work. I started 18 collecting graphic design books and reading graphic design annuals and illustration books and looking through 500-page books every day just for the joy of looking. And then I'd like something and I'd fold the page and say, I love this. And then I would go back and ask myself in a self-critical way, why do I love it? I love it because there's so much negative space. Like you look at Apple's branding, for example, and you go to a store and like, why is it so appealing? Because there's so much space. Sometimes you walk in a mall by an Apple store and there's a Sony store right next door and the Apple store has like 80 items and the Sony has 350 items and there's no one in the Sony store and the Apple store is packed. And it's because simplicity done and less quality than more quantity. And I think that all applies into everything artistic. Like I said, looking at stuff and not just looking and saying, I really love that, but asking yourself why you love it. What is it about it that you love? And it's that self-critical thinking and making good decisions and just being always trying to be more self-critical and make better decisions. Even I look at my own work and I look at my older work and I don't like it as much as say newer pieces. And some older pieces I like better than newer pieces. And I think it's just, you have to constantly look at your own work and re-evolve yourself, redo your website, redo your branding, and keep up with the times. It's a little overwhelming, but I do it organically, but I'm always in it and thinking about it. And I think that's really where, I don't say confidence is just trying to do the best work I can do.
Yeah.
I think that's,
yeah.
And not putting out work just because I did it. I don't put anything out unless I love it. I would hang it up in my house. Sometimes I'll do 50 or 100 pieces. I'll never release any of them because I don't love them. And I do it all organically. I don't even know what I'm making. I just constantly experiment until it looks right and it feels right. And I go, wow, it's done. It feels right. And I move on to the next piece. Sometimes I come back to a piece 6 months or a year later. Same thing. Yeah.
Has there ever been a piece where you've abandoned that you didn't think you would come back to, but then you did come back to it?
Yeah, I was working on a Whitney Houston piece for a year and a half. I never liked any of them. And then one day, a friend of mine said, come to an event. Clive Davis is going to be there. I'd love to introduce you to him. And I said, oh my God, I got to finish this Whitney Houston piece. I would love to gift a copy to Clive because he discovered her. And I went ballistic for a couple of days and I actually really loved the piece. I said, I finally love it. And I literally drove to the event in traffic and got there right as he was leaving and met him and showed it to him and he loved it. And I gifted it to him and it's sitting in his house now.
Amazing.
And then I wound up doing him one for his office and a Joplin for his office. And sometimes that happens. In other examples, I photographed Barack Obama and did his portrait years ago. And I did 100 digital art pieces from that portrait. And I wound up not liking any of them as much as the actual photo. And that's never happened. And I wound up auctioning one off at Christie's about 6 months ago and gave the money to the Robert Kennedy Human Rights Charity. But I wound up gifting him a copy of it and he loved it. Sent me a nice letter. I gifted him a massive piece of it. And it was really hard I've spent literally thousands of hours doing 100 Obama pieces, if not more. And then just going back to the original photo and liking it better than all the art I made.
Yeah. In some ways too, it sounds like it's very multi-layered. It sounds like your process in that respect where one, the process you're describing, we're talking about, you mentioned being self-critical or self-reflective or introspective. That kind of helps power one's adaptation and change and evolution just in life. And so by attributing that and putting it to your art, it sounds like you're tapped into the call it the overall flow of the universe of life, which is constant change and evolution and iterating and evolving. And so it sounds
Yeah,
like,
and knowing how to make a confident choice of what you like best.
yeah,
Even though I did 100 pieces and I wanted to pick one of them because I put so much time in, I have enough critical taste to look back and go, no, the original photo that I did was better than all these. And but I thought about putting out a NFT of 100 Obamas of all the pieces that I didn't do, and since they're all digital, which is something I also might release.
and that critical taste, again, to come back to that, to be able to get to that point where you like the original with the Obama piece better than the rest, as you mentioned, that was developed over time and through just repetition of doing exactly that, exercising that muscle and eventually having it become, I would imagine, second nature.
Yeah, and being that self-critical to say throw away all this work, but if that's my favorite piece, then it's never happened like that. I usually start with an image, do tons of things until I like it or don't like it, and I've never put so much time into so many pieces and then just like the original. I thought I didn't have to spend time doing any of it. I could have just went with the original image, but
Yeah,
I thought I'd wind up making something better, but it just didn't happen because again, it's experimental. I don't know. I just play with stuff and see what happens, and nothing really made me go, I like this better than that. So
sure.
trusting your own taste.
Yes.
That's because there's no right or wrong taste. Because the taste of like when I put art out in New York, it sells very well, or Aspen, for example. But in California, it doesn't sell well, or Florida, because the people who live there have different tastes. Some is cheesier, some is more glamorous, some is more bright. Everyone has, and like I said, there's no right or wrong taste because everyone has different tastes and in different places in the world too.
And how interesting then that you were able to figure that out and understand that geography in this case is playing a role, geography and how that is shaping taste, because you could be a fantastic artist and live in an area in which that community doesn't necessarily respond to that art, but then go somewhere else
That's
and have it
right.
be more well received.
100%. You could be a top artist in Miami, come to New York, and no one buys your art, and vice versa in New York, unless you can adapt and understand the taste of the people in the place that you're living. Like I ship stuff to London or to Japan or Dubai all the time, but again, very rare do I find California or Miami or Chicago. It's like Texas. I sell a lot of stuff. It's just again, it's also individual's taste. It's definitely a different taste.
And to bring,
And that goes for home design, cars, clothing, everything. It's not
sure.
just art. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that refined sense of taste, though, it sounds like, even though, as you mentioned, taste isn't right or wrong, but having a specific taste that resonates with people might be something that consistently is something that can be learned and trusted.
Yeah, you can adapt. I like the New York taste. I'm a New Yorker. I like to do my stuff, and then whoever likes to buy it buys it. And I don't really think about doing it for a specific demographic.
Do you, when you gift a piece of art, is that something that, is it just, hey, like the Whitney example, I'm going to hopefully bump into Clive. He has a history with her. I want to connect those dots through my art. And obviously, you're confident in your pieces that they'd be well received. Is that just literally baseline? It's getting your art out there, but in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't gift art very often. I'm friendly with Clive, and I've met him a bunch of times, spent time with him since then. He's just such a wonderful human being, and saw his documentary, and he's such a teddy bear, amazing human being. And he's done so much for so many creative people that I just wanted to give him something special for how special he is.
Again, to tie it back to everything else, it's through that nature, through your desire to give in whatever capacity, it, I think, just continues to snowball and build a brand and aesthetic and a human of positivity and good karma.
Yeah, exactly. I pretty rare I gifts, but usually have to be incredibly down to earth, genuine people,
Right on.
and usually people that have done a lot of free stuff and helped a lot of people from just their karma, their person.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a validating exercise that I think more people can and should learn from, myself
Yeah,
included. And
yeah,
that's what life's all about. We're here to
exactly.
share it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Sharing is caring.
Amen. Amen, Paul. Where can people find you if they're interested in learning more about just potentially becoming a collector, your art in general, what you have coming up, the studios, all that stuff?
Just my site, Gerben Fine Art, Gerben fineart.com. That's pretty much all my work. And then, of course, I have some pieces on Super Rare and OpenSea, a couple of NFTs left.
Awesome. Paul, I appreciate the conversation. Appreciate you going on this journey of learning more about you, your process, and your art.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Lights, Camera, Crypto, a podcast produced by Matt Bogart and Dessential Media. Music by Brian Duncan and Kareem Imes. If you enjoyed this experience, be sure to rate and subscribe to our show and to follow @Sladden and @Dessential Media for additional content.